Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking to a longtime industry expert about data analytics, how to get more from your company's analytics practice. We'll look at artificial intelligence, and we'll look at a technology called entity resolution. With me today is Jeff Jonas, Chief Executive Officer and founder of Senzing. Jeff, happy Friday to you.
Hey, thanks. Happy Friday to you too.
And I know we talked before we started. You've had a busy morning. I appreciate you being able to get on board here this morning. You've had a lot going on, so thank you for being here this morning.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm a few minutes late, but I have arrived.
Sometimes the arrival is worth it. I've got some hopefully insightful questions to ask you, but let's do the kind of the elevator pitch. You're stuck in an elevator with a VC. You want to get funding, which you don't need that, I realize. But what is the elevator pitch? What does Senzing do for those people who don't know about it?
Organizations struggle with figuring out who's who. It's about, deduplication. It's about record linkage. People call it patient record matching. It has a lot of different names. People struggle with that. We've made it easy. We make that an easy task for developers. So we don't sell cars, we sell transmissions. People building software, plug us in, and it solves that as easily as it would solve basically adding in a spell checker or grammar checker.
So your users really are professional developers?
Yes. Yeah, coders.
Gotcha. Or I guess ultimately, of course, the companies that hire those developers are your ultimate clients.
Yeah, the buyer's often somebody that's a business unit exec.
Yep. All right, data analytics in the year 2024. I think there's a rule that says I'm supposed to ask about artificial intelligence. It's the only thing people are talking about this year. So, Jeff, data analytics 2024, around the corner. Do you see AI as a savior of those companies that are struggling with data analytics? Is that going to cure all the problems?
Well, it is not going to cure the problems. It's going to definitely change the landscape, though, about how people are spending their resources. And I think a lot of companies are just taking a pause to go, how are we going to align our capital spend with these new technologies that are really, really epic changes in what's possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Generational changes. Do you think people are in a position to actually understand the possibility? Do you think people are sort of like, fogging about, so to speak?
I think it's being over imagined what's possible now, but even if it's 50% of the imagination, it's phenomenal. And,
right.
If we're talking about LLM specifically, I see them as more qualitative than quantitative. And some are looking for them for answers and complaining about hallucinations, but you've missed the point. They're designed to be qualitative. And so if you really think about harnessing them that way, I think it's going to accelerate, successful use cases.
Let me make sure I understand you. That the large language models are expected to be quantitative, or they're supposed to be qualitative, not quantitative. Yeah. Meaning what exactly?
Well, an example would be one of the things you might want to know from an entity resolution engine is why did it put those records together? Well, the Senzing API sends you a string of machine readable stuff called JSON. Guess what? You pass that through an LLM, it flowers it up, turns it into language. And it'll say it different every single time. But you know what it'll tell you? It'll tell you something like, hey, the inbound record had this address, 123 Main Street. It turned out to match with a score of 88 to that address. But the next time you run it, it'll be more beautiful language, but it'll be stated very differently.
I can't resist a short detour into the world of large language models, in that it seems like it's a hot topic, and some companies are thinking, you know what, do we want to build our own? Do we want to buy one off the shelf and try to customize it? Or, what's your thoughts about it? It seems like it's one of those big competitive advantages. It's a little beneath the surface of the AI hysteria. Let's just talk for a second. What's your sense of the large language model at this moment in time?
Well, I think it starts with where does the data flow? I think a lot of organizations don't want to present their data out into the wild. And so therefore they're, the move, I think in a lot of cases is going to be to bring that in-house and have the language models run in-house. And there's quite a few efforts going on where people are training it against their own internal data. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that evolves. But it's going to evolve really, really fast. And I liken this to when IBM's Watson, won the game Jeopardy. It captured the world's imagination, and then tens of billions flowed in. Well, what's happening now? It's hundreds of billions is flowing in. Like this is whatever that was that led to now. What's happening now is orders of magnitude bigger.
Yes, right. No, I think it is a quantum leap from those Jeopardy win days. Absolutely. All right, so here's the key question. So companies are struggling with the data analytics practice. They're sort of doing it. They know they're missing a lot. What's your advice to them? How to get some more advice, more results from their data analytics practice?
Well, I think it starts with architecture. And, I feel like I've been beating on this drum forever, but people would just keep building batch processes. And if you're trying to be competitive, you're trying to make decisions, you're trying to make sense of what your organization's observing fast enough to do something about it, and fast and smarter and faster than your competition. So when people are creating processes that they rerun a batch run every weekend or once a night, it's going to be hard to be competitive. And those architectures aren't going to grow up and be real time. And so I think a place to start is real-time architecture, so that as the data is arriving, as you're having the call with the customer, as that information is being collected, it's available to the rest of the organization. So if that same person happens to connect through a different channel, a hot second later, you have the right information. So real-time, I'll call them streaming or even sense-making architectures.
Does that mean it has to be built on Flash, or is that beside the point?
Well, there's lots of, like our system, for example, you need really high-speed I/O. Some kinds of processes need super high-speed I/O. Other processes don't, but you need low latency end to end,
Okay.
Yeah.
Other thoughts about improving the results from the data analytics practice? What about those companies that are floundering? What would you tell them?
More context for better decisions. Often it's no longer the algorithms. In many cases, I would look at the algorithm. You could go spend a lot more money and make it a tiny, tiny bit better. But what you really want to do is kind of widen the observation space and use more data. So when I say context, I mean better understanding something by taking into account the things around it. If you see the bat in a sentence, you look at the words around it to know if it's a baseball bat or a bat that flies in a cave. It's the same with organizations' information. I think of it like puzzle pieces, really. You get a red puzzle piece. Your best understanding, your best ability to understand it's going to be to see what other pieces sit around it. And this,
where does that shift take place? Is that down at the developer level? How would companies make that shift?
Well, as the data is arriving, what you're trying to do is assemble it. If it has to, and I'll go to the entity resolution, since it's kind of where I'm living these days, is a new piece of data arrives, and you're trying to figure out, is this a new person, a known person? Are they related to somebody that we're already doing business with? And having that puzzle piece, say, land in the neighborhood of the same, profile or resume as the customer, or same household, gives you more information so that you can make better decisions. So it's about landing information in context and then using information in context to do decisioning.
Well, let's go ahead and drill down into what Senzing does, and how is Senzing addressing the analytics needs of its clients, and what's the Senzing advantage?
Well, here's the thing: is I've been building entity resolution systems for decades, and they've been expensive and only for the elite. If you want the really good stuff, and they're hard to build. They take it's a phenomenal amount of money. You can get 70% of a go-to list of features you want in entity resolution, like explainable and real time and accurate and easy to use. That'll cost you $1 million to get 70%.
Well, wait, just so I'm clear, and you may have already talked, but can you give us like the 101 definition? What is entity resolution?
Okay, yeah. It's recognizing when two entities are the same, even if they're described different. This one says Elizabeth, this says Beth. The dates of birth, the month and day are transposed, the addresses are messy, or she's changed her last name. Is it the same person or not? And that's entity resolution. It comes by a lot of different terms. It's like deduplication is a term, patient record matching is a term, fuzzy matching, data matching is like 30 or 40 terms. This is fundamental in every know your customer, every AML system, every CRM, every master data management, every insider threat, every vendor supply chain, every sanction screening, every fraud system, all of them. Really, if you don't do a good job harnessing who's who, you can't produce great results. And particularly if you're trying to catch bad guys, they don't use the same name and address on every record. What about them? And we've spent years working on that.
All right, so that is entity resolution. So put that in the context of what Senzing is doing. How does Senzing help companies?
So we've just made it easy for companies to do this. And many companies, as I was saying, try to go and build this themselves. You get a bunch of PhDs around and you spend tens of millions of dollars, and it's not real time and it's not that accurate. It's not that good. And what we've done is we turned it into a plugin. It's a linked library or a DLL or a shared object, as most of our partners are on Linux. And you just plug it in. So we've just made it easy it's the first time it's really accessible and easy for the masses. So our purpose is to kind of commoditize entity resolution, not just for the elite.
So it's delivered via an API.
Yeah, and we ship it to them and they run it local. No data flows to us. Who wants to send all their customer data to me? I don't want it. So we send people code, they compile it in as a function call, and voila, they got entity resolution. They can spend their money on other stuff.
Well, what would the this is probably not a fair question, but I'll ask you anyway, Seth, because you can handle it. What would some other big data analytics vendors? We know the household names. I won't mention their names, but someone asked them, well, "How's your entity resolution?" And they go, "We're good at entity resolution. Look at ABC." So, I mean, a lot of the companies would say, "Hey, we already our large brand name analytics package already does entity resolution."
Yeah. Actually, and boy, it's in quite a large market. $1 billion has even been funded towards entity resolution centered companies in the last 5 years. It's phenomenal. What makes us different, other than being easy to use, which, by the way, is maybe the hardest thing of all,
Right.
it's the fact that we're real time and scaled to billions of records. There's no moving parts. It's all this years and years, 300 years on my team's been working on this in this, as in the history, and we compressed it down into one dynamic link library that talks to a SQL database. So the simplicity thing is not to be overlooked, but beyond that, it's real time, it's explainable, and it's sequence neutral, which means if the data arrives out of order, you get the same answer.
Okay.
And that's the hard part. It's part of the real-time learning we build in this AI. I'll explain that another way is you've seen 1 billion records and you've made 1 billion decisions. Now you get record 1,000,001. Our real-time learning algorithm goes, wow, now that I know that, had I known that in the beginning, over the billions of decisions I've made, should I made any differently? That's very different. It fixes the past.
Fixed is the past, and then the future is
smarter. Then the future smarter. See, what happens to basically every other algorithm out there is as you get more data, kind of maybe you learned a new piece of data and it tells you that that's not a junior and a senior, or it isn't. Let's say it is a junior. Hey, that's a junior and a senior. I shouldn't have put them together. Most systems that are batch, end of month, whatever, once a quarter, you rerun it. Then you learn that. Well, you just went a long time without having the right information. So using new observations to reverse earlier assertions in real time is non-trivial. And it drives the accuracy up.
What about the question of artificial intelligence? Of course, data is always the foundation of artificial intelligence. So the Senzing product can tie into improving AI. Does Senzing itself use artificial intelligence?
Yeah, we built something purpose built just for entity resolution. It uses statistics as it's ingesting to self-tune, and it uses local knowledge as well about an entity, like when you learn a nickname, and then it goes backwards in time and applies that nickname to see if it would make any decisions differently.
Cool. Well, let's look at the future. I think the big question is the future of data analytics, AI, and entity resolution. Say we're having the same conversation in 2027 or thereabouts, just a ways out. What sort of things do you see? And probably most important, how can companies be getting ready for it now?
I think there's going to be less keyboards. I think the way, we're
less what? I'm sorry?
Keyboards.
Keyboards. Okay, they're going to go because things will be voice driven.
Yeah, or voice or Neuralink or some, eyeball tracking. Having to type, I think, now does that happen by 2027? I don't know. But, with these large language models, I don't know if you've ever, you want to change your default directory in Microsoft Word. It says a bit of work. Where is it? Huh? Where are you going to go to do that? Natural language, LLMs, you're just going to be, hey, change my default directory. Just change it. And in the space of entity resolution, and by the way, not even entity resolution, but just in search. Jeff, tab, Jonas, tab, June 22nd, tab. You're just going to say, hey, would you find me the Jeff Jonas record? It's going to be conversational search.
Right.
You're not going to be clicking around looking for why do records come together. You're going to be, why did those records come together? And it's going to become it's going to be the way natural language is. It's really going to change a lot of the way people interface with computers. I think that's going to be one of the bigger changes. And I would also add, if you talk to somebody today, you're getting ready to maybe work with somebody. You're like, hey, you're more of a Mac or Windows person. They go, I don't use computers. You're like, you don't use computers. For email, they go, yeah, no, I put in the work. It's going to feel like, I'm telling you, way before 2027, it's going to be, hey, which AI do you use? Bard, Bing, ChatGPT. They'll be like, oh no, I don't use an assistant. You're going to be like, you mean to tell me you re-listen to the recording of it, of the 1 hour session, and then you summarize it, and then you do it all by hand. That's crazy. That's where we're going.
Well, it seems like I already asked my phone, Thai restaurant near me in San Francisco, and my phone kicks out the answers. That almost feels like it's very close to. Of course, it's not a true analytics program, but it's sifting through data, so to speak. So that almost feels like it's here in many ways.
Yeah, I think we're gonna see it integrated into more of the products that we use, and it's going to become it's exciting, this era right now. This is just really breakthrough. In back to the entity resolution, there's been no giant breakthroughs for quite a while, but what LLMs are going to do for conversational entity resolution, where you can talk to an entity engine, holy moly, it's going to change. It's so exciting. The LLMs are just going to so radically change the way people interface with systems, and the future is very exciting. It's this so kind of Renaissance era.
Is there one thing that you think might actually surprise people? Like, oh, we had no idea this particular idea was coming. Like, gosh, we're really surprised, shocked that this is happening now. If you put on your deep futurist cap.
That's a good. See, no keyboards.
Right.
I'll tell you, we're watching. We in our lifetimes we saw a 100-year pandemic. In our lifetimes, we're watching one of our own scripts become archaic. They don't teach cursive in school anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're watching and a Latin happen right in front of our eyes. But these keyboards is, the fact you got to tickety type it out. I don't know. I think that's going to be one of the things that goes away, and how it gets replaced will be interesting. You're right. What's the speed and efficiency of that interface?
Interesting. Yeah, and I definitely see the fate of keyboards. We integrate more and more seamlessly with our computer system, so the idea of a keyboard becomes archaic.
Do you think it goes to eyes? Do you think it goes to eyes, or do you think it goes to some kind of brain read your mind kind of thing?
Yeah, I guess it really, I could see it actually would be a mind-computer interface. If we go, way out on a limb here, I think that there would be actually a mind-computer, and that has to be coming.
Oh, it is. It's going to be the same thing. You're going to go see who you want to work with. You go, hey, what mind-computer interface do you use? And they go, why don't you use one? They're like, you literally be the same conversation.
Jeff, that's cool. It's a lot of good stuff. I learned a ton. As always, I think the entity resolution piece is fascinating. Thank you for sharing your insight, and please come back and talk with us again sometime.
Thanks for having me. It's great seeing you again.